You can probably already tell by the title of this podcast, but just in case, a heads up. Adult language will definitely be making an appearance. So if you're at work, around the kids, or just in front of some judgy pets, might want to grab some headphones. Here we go. Hey, it's Leslie. Welcome to My Effing Desk, Season 1 finale, the last episode of our first season. More about that later, but first I need to say hello in another language because we're up to, what is it? Like 21 countries, I think, that My Effing Desk is being heard in. So awesome. And I'm really excited because we finally have some Spanish-speaking countries. So now I can do hello in Spanish, which I actually speak. So, hola, bienvenidos. Gracias por escuchar. Yay! I'll try a more daring language next time, I promise. So as I mentioned, this is the last episode of season 1. It's really flown by. I've learned so much. I hope you have too. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. Never fear. I will be back for season 2. I'm just going to take a little bit of a breather. And after all that, get to work making season 2 even better. Speaking of which, head on over to myeffingdeskpodcast.com/survey to take the listener survey. I'm going to be looking at those during the break and getting all of your input for what you would like to see in season 2. Today's guest is Anna Vartiainen. She's a visual artist, our first visual artist on the show, and our first guest from England. She was born in France, as you'll hear in the interview, to Finnish parents, and then moved to England as a child. So she's got a little bit of everything in there. She's got a unique take on imposter syndrome that I'm excited for you to hear. It's a little bit of a different perspective than we've heard before, but one that definitely has some value, and I've been thinking on it since the interview. Anna also talks about an awesome sanity saver that I think all of us can put to use. I love the system she has set up with her friend. It does have something to do with Zoom, but probably the best type of Zoom call I can think of. So keep your ears perked for that one. The other thing I loved about our conversation was, as you can tell from the episode title, this idea of embracing imperfection, of, how did she put it? The happy accidents that come about when making art. That is something that a recovering perfectionist like me needs to hear, and maybe you need to hear it too. Anna is an artist based out of England, and she studied art and design history. She's heavily influenced by nature and does drawings, paintings, printmaking, screen printing. Her stuff is just so unique and striking. I'll put some pictures in the show notes that you'll be able to see. She exhibited at her first art fair in London recently and also opened her own shop. And in addition to that, she has opened her home each summer since 2015, turning it into an art gallery for the local art trail. She and her husband also came up with a really clever way of making people comfortable with coming to see art in a total stranger's house. And they even came up with a cheeky, very much pun intended, name to go with that project. That name still cracks me up. Please welcome to My Effing Desk, Anna Vartiainen. Thank you for doing this. I'm glad to finally meet you.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. So I've started doing this thing recently after noticing that people are starting to pop up around the world listening to the show. I've started saying hello in different languages, or attempting to, of whichever countries that come up in the listener list. So I know with you being from Finland or having family from Finland, I thought maybe you could help us and say hello in Finnish.
Or you could just say, hey.
Oh, really? Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. Hey, I can do it. Awesome. And you were teaching me some curse words in Finnish this summer.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? So your parents are Finnish, and then you were born in France?
Yes. So they met there. My mum was an au pair and my dad was working there. And then they were moved here for my dad's work. And we did live in France again for a year and then came back again.
Okay. So England feels more like home to you.
Yeah.
That's so cool, though, because you have such a mix of these different cultures, like already in you.
Yeah. So it was very much a Finnish household. My parents spoke Finnish to me all the time, and every summer we'd go to our family cabin and like in the forest. It was really lovely.
In Finland?
In Finland, yeah.
Oh, so this cold that I've been talking about is nothing to you. It's like we're total wusses down here.
Yeah, I can't really deal with the heat very well.
Right? It's the other side of it when it gets to be, well, I don't know in Celsius, but in like 110 degrees or something. It's insane.
No, I just sort of melt.
Completely. So was creativity always a part of your life? Did it come about later? How did that work for you?
It was always there. It was always a no-brainer, really. I was always just going to be drawing. That was it. My mum paints. She's an artist as well. But yeah, I was whenever you got like an assessment at school or had to write a project, I would do the writing bit and then I'd spend hours making a lovely front cover for it. I just never envisaged working in an office environment. I saw myself in this sort of big, lofty warehouse room painting, not seeing anyone for days and smoking and drinking coffee or something.
Just living the artist life.
Yeah. It didn't happen, but
it seems like you got pretty close.
Some of it.
Yeah. Did you pretty much just stick to drawing and painting growing up? Because I know you do screen printing now.
Yeah, I just sort of taught myself screen printing recently after doing a one-day course a few years ago. When my kids were smaller, I was doing some digital prints, but it just didn't it doesn't have quite as much, I don't know. Some people don't view it as proper art, I guess, when you have a digital print. And it is really nice having something handmade and you've done every single part of the process and you get those happy accidents that you don't get with digital. So yeah, I can't really call myself a screen printer, I don't think yet, but
I think you can. I'll put some pictures in the show notes so that everyone can see, but that has always been a love of mine is screen printing. I mean, all sorts of art, but I think I'm just fascinated by it because I can do a lot of performing arts, but visual arts are just totally foreign to me. And especially screen printing, it just seems there's something about it. But the happy accidents, I want to come back to that there's more happy accidents that can happen when it's not working digitally. Did you have to kind of learn to embrace those happy accidents? Were you always okay with that?
Yeah, I'm always okay with that. That's just part of what makes it really special, isn't it? Yeah, you can have the bad accidents where you just have to leave it and walk away. But yeah, sometimes the colour's slightly wrong and you just go along with it and actually it ends up being like a bestseller or something.
I think that's such great advice. And I'm envious that comes naturally to you because I'm very perfectionistic. I want it right immediately. But on the times when I can let go and let the mistakes come in and see them not even as mistakes necessarily, but just going a little bit different than you expected. It's very freeing.
Lino cutting is lovely as well for that because you get those sort of splodgy bits from the block when you've printed it. Quite like those little flecks that you get. And when things slightly misregister as well, they have a kind of retro,
Can you explain the difference between lino cutting and screen printing? Do you do the lino cut I don't know. I'm going to let you do it because I'll embarrass myself.
So I can show you, but obviously it's not very good for a sound recording. But
that's all right.
So for lino cutting, it's basically you carve a block.
Okay.
And what's left sticking up is what you then print from.
Okay.
So you put ink on the relief part of it. And then you press with the printing press or just with the back of a spoon to get the ink onto the paper. And then you've got your print. Whereas screen printing, you have a mesh where the mesh is sort of clear and not blocked out with fluid. You force the ink through with a squeegee onto the paper underneath. And that's where the ink comes out from the non-blocked bit of mesh.
That's so cool. I'm going to come visit your studio in England one day and see you do it in action.
Yeah. I wish I had space. I've got space for lino cutting here, but I go and use another studio for printing because they're all set up for it and they've got the big machines. And
do you feel like you've become more free with the imperfections and all of that since you became a parent? Do you think that that's helped at all?
I think with art, I've not really been ever worried too much about imperfection.
Maybe it's been the other way around. Being an artist, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to force it, but I don't know. I'm just thinking of the way that in parenting, it never goes as planned. And it's kind of hard when you have a certain ideal of what's going to happen. I mean, God, look at the pandemic. That's the perfect example of things going completely off the course. And it seems to me like being someone who is used to rolling with the punches like you are would kind of help with that in parenting and in life. Maybe I'm getting really philosophical here.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had my first child quite young, so I definitely rolled with the punches then. I was 24 and then ended up single for a couple of years as well, moving back in with my parents. And I think at that age, you kind of just deal with it, don't you?
Yeah.
And so now I'm just happy to have the time to do any art at all. I opened a shop at the end of 2019, and with that I can be more professional and sort of product ranges and things, and it allows me to be much more creative with my own art and not worry so much about creating a range to sell of my own all the time. I think that's allowed me to be much more free.
Having your own place and doing your own thing.
Yeah, having a sort of a real job.
Right?
I've made it myself. It's a real job that I'm allowed to go to.
Yeah. I feel like I struggle with that all the time. Just last week, I was like, I just need a real job. I'm tired of trying to piece it all together, I guess. But there's something about the legitimacy of, I think, especially having an actual shop that you can show, this is mine.
Yeah, and you have to go there.
Right.
Bye, family. I've got to go.
Do they ever come with you? Your kids ever come with you to help, or?
Yeah, the little one does sometimes when, she has to. Yeah, she can tolerate about 4 hours.
Right.
And then it just gets a bit hard.
Totally. I was thinking about like everything that goes into creating something and then marketing it and promoting and shipping the things out. How do you kind of structure your day around all that? Do you block it off? Is it just putting out a fire, like whatever comes up first?
Yeah, definitely. Orders happen first. Pack those up, sort them out. Emails and admin. Good to get it all done before lunch. Then you're not sort of looking at it in the afternoon. And then, afternoons is, if I've got time to be creative, then that's when it happens.
So, and do you try to make sure you have that every day?
No, I wish I did.
Right?
I try it at least once a week, but it's quite easy to have it as the least priority, unfortunately.
Right there with you. That's kind of why I wanted to ask. It's interesting because it's been the same or similar for what I've asked writers, dancers. I mean, I guess once you start making money off of your work, it's sort of ironic how it flips. The admin stuff has to take over more just by the nature of the beast. But it's like there's less time to actually create it sometimes.
Yeah. And the nice thing about the shop is that that's also creative. So a lot of the things I'm doing, the product photography for the website and editing that, and obviously managing. I don't mind all the admin for the shop because I control all of it. So it's still quite kind of creative.
I think it's a good point that it's maybe a narrow view of creativity to think of just making new artwork or learning a new skill or something, but the promotion and the marketing and the work that goes into the business itself is very creative and can be fulfilling if it's still sort of tied to your work, getting it out there into the world.
Yeah, definitely. And like you, I'm really interested in other people's work. So loads of people's illustration and prints and ceramics and cards. And I love working with other artists and curating it all and writing about it all.
It's not the warehouse maybe that you pictured and smoking all day and everything, but it seems like you've got a pretty good approximation of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's much more collaborative and sociable as well.
And your partner is in the creative field as well. Isn't that right?
Sort of. He runs a live venue. He does run the One Bum Cinema Club project, which started off in our understairs cupboard. Did I tell you about that before?
I saw a post about it and I wanted to ask you about it. I'm glad you said the name. I couldn't remember. The One Bum Cinema Club?
Yeah.
So what is that?
So basically every summer we normally open our house up as like a gallery. We basically put an exhibition in the downstairs of our house, and to try and make it more fun and more inclusive and sort of entice more people to come, because it's quite difficult some people might get quite nervous going into someone's house and look at some art, like worry that we're going to try and sell stuff to them or something that they don't want. Anyway, we had this crazy idea to make a tiny cinema in the understairs cupboard. So we had a cinema seat and installed it in there and made it into a tiny, tiny cinema and showed animations by some of our friends.
That's amazing.
It was really popular, and now they've built like a mobile version of it. So it went on tour.
Is it still one bum on tour, like only one seat?
It's one seat, yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. It's like a micro theater experience.
Yeah, and it specializes just in animation. So it's quite cool. It's basically people from all around the world are sending their work in to be shown in this little box.
How exciting. That kind of leads me into another thing that I was wondering about, and I wrote to you about it. And this may be hard to discuss since we both have our own separate experiences, but maybe we can compare. I remember you talking about getting funding to keep your shop open. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it just there seems to be more value placed on helping an individual artist survive over there. I remember, so my husband's from Argentina, and after you and I were chatting about the assistance that artists were getting to stay open or to keep going during the pandemic, we were both kind of chuckling because in Argentina, that would definitely happen. There's more value, I guess, placed on art. But here, I mean, it's just, I know that it's out there. I know that there are certain grants available, but it feels very limited. And there's much more of an attitude of, well, that's what you chose to do, but why should I pay for it? Like, do something useful, like being a doctor or something. Is it similar there? Have I got that wrong?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
That's depressing.
So the theatres and the performing arts, people who have power in that industry, had to really campaign for the government to do a bailout for the theatres and live venues.
Yeah.
A lot of venues did get the funding, but it's just to survive. It's not really to get back on their feet. It just means they won't close completely. I'm quite lucky with the shop because it comes under retail, so it's not art. And luckily my rent's quite low because I'm slightly off the main road, so it really helps me. Whereas if I was around the corner, I'd be really worried.
Isn't that interesting that because you sell stuff, because it qualifies as retail, that it bumps you into a safer category? I mean, I guess it makes sense on some level, but I saw someone tweet something towards the beginning of the pandemic, like, everyone, please remember what is getting you through this. It's art. Everyone is watching Netflix or watching movies or learning how to draw on YouTube or, all these different ways that art is saving us. And somehow it's non-essential still in so many people's views. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and most artists are, freelancers and self-employed. And a self-employed grant is a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. And it goes on your last, 3 years tax return or something. And so if you've just become self-employed, then you just get nothing.
Wow. Oh man, we could go all down that hole, but we'll move on. So a lot of your work centers around nature. Have you always been drawn to nature in your art?
Yeah, always. Yeah, I think it probably just comes down to those summers in the forest, going out to sea and, just hopping about and imagining the trees as kind of creatures and the rocks and using my imagination. And yeah, absolutely. I would happily go and live in the forest now, I think.
I could see that. I think your view of them as creatures, as beings, comes through in the work because they're so, it's not like just a landscape or something. They are the central feature of so many of your pieces. It's beautiful, especially trees, which I love. I posted a couple weeks ago about my neighbor cutting down a tree. My husband was just laughing at me. And he wasn't like, he got it, but he could kind of move on with his day. And all day long, it was just like the sounds of the chainsaw were just all through the house. And it felt, it's going to sound so dramatic, but it just felt like I was watching like a murder or something happening. It was awful, awful, awful. And I don't know. I think that's probably what drew me to your work, is someone else that sort of sees nature and trees and the outside world in a similar way, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of the pandemic, how have things had to shift with that, especially with having your kids at home? I feel like we've all kind of had to reconfigure our schedules and getting especially creative work in. How's that worked for you?
Just try and squeeze it in, really. So different days of the week, we share the homeschooling. I mean, one thing that's really, really been lovely is Sunday afternoons I've dedicated to calling my best friend on FaceTime and just whiling away the whole afternoon drawing together.
Oh,
So we'll just drink tea and eat biscuits and draw.
that's so nice.
It is so nice, and it's kind of a bit like I'm out of the house. Obviously, the 7-year-old comes in and jumps around, but it's kind of I'm allowed to go and just sit there and draw because I'm on a FaceTime call and I'm kind of unavailable and I'm out. So that's really nice. I've reclaimed the dining room as my own as well. A bit greedy because I've got the shop as well. I've sort of covered the dining table in wigs and paint pots and with paper and
all the art supplies.
All the art supplies are just all over the table, and I've been allowed to do it, so that's fine. That's good.
Those calls sound like such a lifesaver to just have some time to chat with your friend and eat biscuits, as you said, and draw.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do your kids like art as well? Do they make art?
The 7-year-old does, and the older one, she's good at it, but she prefers drama.
Interesting. I mean, not surprising at that age, right? What 13-year-old does not prefer drama? It's so neat to see it go down to the next generation. Like your mom passed it to you, and then you're passing it to your daughter.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to finish up here with the lightning round?
Sure.
All right. I think I know this, but I'll ask it anyway. What is your effing desk? Your creative area that's just yours. It could be physical or otherwise.
So, well, like I said a minute ago, I've got two because I've reclaimed the dining room, and I've got this huge desk in the shop, which is expandable. I had it built so that we could run workshops here. So it's the lovely big desk.
Wonderful. And the dining room. This is great. You have two areas that are for your creative work. That's admirable. What is keeping you sane right now?
Apart from the Sunday afternoon sessions, walking, it's like the only thing we can do really at the moment. I mean, going on the beach is right there. So when the tide's out, it's really magical. You can walk for, 100 meters or something out just on the flat sand. And that's really, really stunning.
I didn't realize you were on the beach. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a pebble beach, but that's kind of nice in its own way. You don't get sand everywhere.
I had never seen a pebble beach until I went to Europe the first time when I was 16. I went to France and I was like, just kind of typical sheltered American, I guess. I was like, I didn't know this was a thing. And it was somewhere on the French Riviera. It was cold and it was like, my feet hurt with all these rocks. This is so different. And now I think
you have to get special shoes. They changed my life. Last year, I just bought these cheap, like rubberized, horrible shoes. They're sort of like gloves for your feet.
Oh, the ones with the toes.
No, not with toes, but just sort of ugly little rubber shoes. But it means you can walk out into the sea. Game changer.
You might have just answered the next question. What is your best life hack besides the cool rubber shoes, the horrible rubber shoes?
I'm quite good at just sort of giving something a go, and I've grown quite thick-skinned as well. So does that count as a life hack?
I think that's great. I mean, think of how much trouble you save yourself just by giving it a go, giving it a shot.
Yeah.
If you could do anything besides what you're doing now, what would it be?
I'd quite like to work in an art museum. I did work when I was much younger, did internships and stuff in art galleries, but some of the galleries are a bit snooty. But then I recently worked part-time in a proper art museum, and that was lovely. So in another life, I'd probably work in an art gallery or museum, or maybe like an interiors magazine.
Ooh. Cool. Do you feel like the snootiness of the museum varies whether like on the type of art that they have inside, or is it just kind of snooty all around depending on the museum?
I think the museums aren't so snooty. It's the galleries, the commercial galleries. You know, the kind where you feel like you're not quite good enough to go in. Yes,
I never go in those. So more the galleries, that makes sense. With museums being more open and welcoming to everyone, but the galleries, it's like they want to check your bank account balance first before you come in.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you've ever gotten?
Some quite good advice. I don't know if it's the best advice, but it's useful advice for creative people is when you have a big deadline, like an exhibition or something, to put that in your diary and then work backwards from that date for all the things you need to get done by then. So do you need to have your stuff photographed professionally, for example? You might have a 12-week lead time for that. And so to put all these mini deadlines in your calendar coming up to the big deadline, so you don't end up panicking in the last week because you've got to frame everything and photograph everything and itemize everything and all that kind of thing. But just put all those dates in the diaries and meet each mini deadline as you come up to the big one.
That's very smart. I think I would be the last week like, oh shit, no one knows about this. I haven't framed anything. I guess you only do that once, maybe before you realize. Yeah, right. What about the worst advice?
I hope you get loads of bad advice, but it's only really bad when you listen to it. Lots of people tell artists what they should be doing, like, oh, you should paint chickens or something. They sell really well.
They sell really well. It's so true. Why do chickens sell well? Oh man, I feel like so many creatives get that general just do whatever sells. Write the next Twilight series or something like that. And all right, fill in the blank. Imposter syndrome is?
It's horrible, but I think it keeps you on your toes a little bit and just makes you improve what you're doing. So if you feel like you're not quite qualified for something, like I said, I don't know if I could call myself a printmaker. You just work harder, until you can say you are that thing.
That's a really good point. When you start resting on your laurels, it's like, oh, I'm wonderful. And
and just complacent, and you get a lot of average people, don't you, that think they're pretty great.
Completely. What was the last thing you read?
Well, I listened to an audiobook of The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
Yeah, I think I have. I've read a lot of her stuff. I know she kind of gets trashed on over here, but I like it.
I loved it. I loved it. And it's really got me into the whole Tudor era.
Yes.
I was actually watching a bit of Wolf Hall at the same time, in the same weeks. So I was fully getting immersed in Henry VIII time.
I love that time period. It's so fascinating. Any type of historical fiction, I'm all in. If you could have a song played every time you entered a room, what would it be?
The song that I probably wouldn't get sick of is Norma Tanega's You're Dead. Do you know that song?
No.
There's a really, really good series called What We Do in the Shadows about these vampires that live together on Staten Island. And it's basically the intro song to that series. And it's just really good.
Nice. Yeah, one you wouldn't get sick of. You'd be into it. Last one. What is next on your bucket list?
Well, first I'm going to teach myself etching, but then I want to build an off-grid cabin somewhere.
Ooh, how hard is that there?
Well, we'd need to move house first.
Yeah.
Somewhere cheaper so that we could, I've got a plan.
Good.
I've got a plan to somehow try and make it happen.
That is so funny because I feel like my thing that's keeping me sane right now is this show. I don't even know if it's on anymore in England, but it's Grand Designs or something.
Oh, yeah.
And he follows all these couples building houses, and a lot of them are doing things like that. And it's made me want to build a house. I've never wanted to build a house, but you see that. And my God, they go through so much shit. And I'm like, still, there's something so cool about just creating your own living space exactly like you want it or as much as you can. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was such a treat to get to talk to you. And I kind of stopped partway through and was thinking, we're halfway around the world from each other and just chatting like we're around the corner. So it was good to finally get to meet you virtually and pick your brain on all of this stuff. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
When I first started the project of My Effing Desk, I found myself asking the women I was interviewing why they did what they did. And the answer I kept getting in so many words was, it's part of who I am. It's not even a question. It's sort of like asking, why do you have blue eyes? Or why do you breathe? And that connected with an overall theme that I've noticed, a strong self-acceptance with the women who have been on the show so far. Of course, they have struggles that we don't see or hear on the show, but there seems to be a deep underlying sense of this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what fulfills me. And I accept that as part of me just as much as I accept anything else. The fact that I'm a mother, that I'm a woman, that I have blue eyes. I am a creator and I need to create. So I thought it was fitting that for this final episode of season 1, to have an artist who is also so accepting of what some might see as faults, but they're not. They're just happy accidents. Thank you for that, Anna. If you want to see more of Anna's work, you can check out her website at annasdrawingroom.com. She's also on Instagram at Anna's Drawing Room, and her shop is foundshopstudio.com. And all that will be in the show notes as well. Before we wrap things up on this season, I just want to remind you again to head on over to myeffingdeskpodcast.com/survey to take our listener survey and give us all your feedback. Don't forget to subscribe as well so that when season 2 rolls around, that episode will pop right up in your phone and you won't miss a thing. And just because we're going away for a bit does not mean you can't leave ratings and reviews. Those are always very welcome and will help us stay current and help new listeners find us. Thank you for that. Be sure you're also following us on Facebook and Instagram at myeffingdeskpodcast, Twitter at myeffingdeskpod, and Pinterest and TikTok at myeffingdeskpodcast. Okay, that's all the F's for a while. Until next time, take care, keep making your art, keep making time for yourself, and don't forget, go shake some shit up.